Our brand new country now has a great big government that they put in place as soon as England's left. That was underneath what we call the Articles of Confederation. That's what we just talked about yesterday and the day before. So, as the country sits with these Articles of Confederation longer and longer, it becomes pretty apparent that there's some really big problems with it. We talked about the weaknesses that are there within the Articles of Confederation, and those problems are just becoming bigger and bigger. So it becomes pretty obvious that they just aren't working and that it needs to be fixed. So what they're going to do is they're going to come together, a bunch of delegates from each of the states so that they can all have some say, and they are going to fix the Articles of Confederation. They're going to take care of it, they're going to make it magically better, and they're going to make this government work. Before we start talking about how they go about that process, we need to know what the problems are. What are these big ticket items that the states are just fighting about? What do they disagree about? One, how many branches of government should there be? What should they be? So the Articles of Confederation set up a legislative branch which had all the power and an executive branch. And remember, they gave it about the smallest amount of power possible because they were just coming off of this government with King George, who was any king, I guess, could fit this category, but took all the power and did all the things and charged him all the taxes and did it because he could and no one could stop him. So they didn't like that. But now what they're seeing is, hey, there's issues sometimes between states. How do we settle the issue between the states? There is no impartial court that does not belong to one of the states. So do we add in a judicial branch? Do we leave it out? Are we okay without it? What are the thoughts that are going around between them? And there are some very heated opinions about all of these topics, which is why they're going back and readdressing it. Next up, how many representatives should each state have? Should each state have the same number of representatives? So what it comes down to is there's really big states. Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, they're really big and really heavily populated. And then there's really little states. Connecticut, Rhode Island, those are some teeny tiny states. Drive through them in less than half a day type of a state. Those little tiny states are all about equality. They want to have equal say as the big states. It doesn't matter that we're a small state. We're a state, they're a state, therefore we should have the exact same amount of vote. My vote does not mean less. Where these big states are going, well, we've got way more people than you, we've got way more land than you, and we've got way more to take care of than you. It's not fair that our voices mean so much less because we only get the same amount of votes as you. So this is a very, very heated debate, and it is one that we're going to talk about all today. Okay, big states versus small states because of that representation. How many houses should there be within the legislative branch? So yes, there's going to be a legislative branch. There has to be people who make laws. Should there just be one group within the legislative branch? What they decide is what goes, and then we move on. It would make the process faster. Absolutely, it would make the process faster. But would it make it better? Would it make better laws? Or do we need to stick with that bicameral legislative branch? Remember, bicameral, bi is to like a bicycle, and two groups. So that's what we have today is bicameral. Spoiler alert, that's what we have today. Okay, so with that, do we need to keep the two separate so that they can kind of offset each other? And if one group comes up with a really crazy, really stupid idea, the other group can be like, no, this would be a much better idea. So that's what they're discussing in that one. And here is one big, huge underlying problem that is going to continue to be a problem through the Civil War and beyond. Should the number of slaves count towards population numbers? So I just want you to think about this. We talked about representation within the state. Small states want equal representation. Large states want it based off of population. So the more people who live in your state, the more people they have there to vote. So that means that they're more likely to get what they want passed because there are more of them there because there's more people in the state. So if that's the case, if we're going to have representation based off of population, do we let the slaves count as part of the population? That is a super loaded question because obviously just thinking about it, you'd be like, yeah, because then it's going to make your numbers bigger. Okay, but then you have to think for a second, if you count them as part of the population, doesn't that mean that you're counting them as being people and not property? Because the whole argument at this point is that they aren't people, they're your property. So what is it? Are they people and they are allowed to go towards the population? Or are they property and therefore you have to pay taxes on them like you would any other property? What's it going to be? So it's not just a simple question of let's count the numbers and yeah, let's count it. It has a lot deeper meaning than that. If you're going to count them towards the population, that is the people there admitting that slaves are people. And if they admit slaves are people, then they really shouldn't be slaves at all. So what's it going to be? Okay, so there's a lot of implications on that. So when we get into that, there's someone who came in and he actually had this brilliant idea and he put in a lot of thought before this group of people met. And he said, I think that this should be our plan. He pre-created this plan. His idea is that we need to just scrap what we have. We need to just completely get rid of the Articles of Confederation and start brand new. There is too many problems with the Articles of Confederation to fix. It would take us too long. It'd be way too wordy. We would be way better off starting new. So he came and he had a ton of detailed notes about it. This is James Madison. James Madison's name and what he is known as. This one's really important to know. He is known as the father of the Constitution. Because he came in prepared, he came in with notes, he had an idea that he had thought out thoroughly. He didn't just come in and say, well, guys, this kind of sucks. What if we just started over? No, he came in and said, this is too much to fix. We need to start new. Here's how we need to do it. And here's my idea. And it is all written out. So they took him incredibly seriously. And that's what they did. So that's why we call it the Constitutional Convention and not the fixing of the Articles of Confederation. Because at this point, they decide to get rid of the Articles of Confederation and start again and write us a constitution. This is the constitution that we have in place today. This is a big one. So when we come to this convention, the first thing they do is they don't publish any information about it. So they have delegates coming that are invited from all of the states to come and talk about this. But they do not publish it in the newspaper. They don't put out any information for the general public to know where, when, all of those details. Why would they do that? Don't we have freedom of press? Why would they not tell people about it? I want you to think about this for a second. I want you to think about any move that the president makes. Okay, so we'll talk about a couple of them here for a minute because I don't really care what you think about the president at this moment, but this will prove a point. So on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Donald Trump made a unscheduled appearance to the Martin Luther King Memorial. And there is two very distinctive headlines that are out there. One of them says, "Look how great our president is. He went out of his way, an unscheduled visit, to go and visit this memorial and pay tribute to this man who did so many great things for America." Okay, so that's the first headline. The second headline says, "This is a publicity stunt." Of course it was not. Of course it was not random and spur of the moment because the president doesn't do anything random or spur of the moment. There would have been people there if it was random and spur of the moment. This was a publicity stunt and he is a piece of crap and garbage and blah, blah, blah. Okay, anything that is done is going to be highly criticized by anyone from the outside. It's really easy to criticize if you have nothing to do with it directly and if you're not there making the decisions. So they decided not to publicize it and not to have the press involved, not to give that outside pressure, not to have people who have money force people's hands to make decisions. Okay, so they wanted this to be as good as it could without any outside influences trying to make up their mind for their own personal gain. Okay, so what they decided to do is, as we talk about this, we are going to vote and talk about any subject as much as we need and vote on it as many times as we need to so that we can get this taken care of. So this goes along with the freedom of the press. No outside group can pressure them to change their mind if they have no idea what's going on and that it's happening. All right. Each state ends up having one vote here during the convention. So yes, some states have more than one delegate, but it's going to be equal say. So there's going to be 13 votes that will be given here at the Constitutional Convention. Okay, so we've got a couple of plans that come up. You need to know what these two plans are and what they detail. I would suggest taking notes on this. If you have a piece of paper, take notes on this. These two are important, and as we're getting into the civics unit, this is a really big deal when you guys go to take your civics test. You may or may not see questions about this on there. So make sure you understand the two. Okay, the first is called the Virginia Plan. This was Madison's plan. He was not the one who presented it, but he is the one who came up with the plan. Here's how he broke this down. We need to have 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. So he's proposing that we add in that judicial branch. He wants to have a bicameral legislative branch. So he wants there to be 2 groups who are making laws that have to agree with each other separately, which is what we have. He wanted the large states to have more representatives than the small states. So remember how I said big states want that? Virginia is a big state. So they're going to want that. That's not anything that's going to be unforeseen. Who is not going to like that? The small states. They're going to hate that. Okay, so some states would make it so other states wouldn't have any say. So they want to essentially kind of brush aside all of those little states. And they can vote all they want. But what it's going to come down to is they are so small that it's really not going to matter. Okay, another thing that is part of this is, according to this Virginia plan, Congress is going to be the one who chooses the president and is going to be the one who chooses the national judges. So there would be no presidential vote like what we see today. It would be 100% up to Congress to do that. The power to veto a bill is going to be with the president and with Congress. Okay, just some problems. You can see them right there kind of on the outside, but this is kind of the outline of the Virginia plan. Okay, so this is a plan that big states are going to really love, that they are going to agree with because it's going to benefit them. Okay, the next one is called the New Jersey plan. The New Jersey plan, New Jersey is a small state, so this is going to be kind of the opposite of that. Okay, so this one is also going to say, yes, we need the 3 branches of government. Okay, so legislative, executive, and judicial. They say that we need to have a single body of Congress. So that's unicameral. So like a unicycle, one wheel. So everyone is going to be together who's making laws. And everyone is going to have equal voting rights. So there is not going to be a difference between Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, between them voting and between New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and those states voting. They're going to be equal. Congress is going to have the same powers as in the articles, but they're also going to add in that they can tax to raise money and that they can regulate what's going on in between states. The small states are going to love this plan because it is going to benefit them.